It will amaze you how many people abandon their super expensive vehicles, even vehicles that are super rare and would cost more money than most of us make in 1 year. Join us as we have a look at the top 20 most incredible abandoned vehicles. Number 20. Jaguar XJ220. This Jaguar was left in the desert to be soaked in the sand, only to be discovered by Crank and Piston's Mick Bramley. A car like this is hard to come by, not to think of it lying abandoned in the desert of Qatar. So what was the owner even thinking? The most surprising part is that the car only had a mileage of 559 miles before being abandoned, and that meant that it was not driven for a long time. Now, I'm pretty sure that the car's designer would not be happy to see it in such a pitiful condition, especially if we're going to go by the assertion that this car was one of Jaguar's most unexpectedly successful models. Such a history should be enough to encourage the owner to have taken good care of it. Unfortunately, this particular XJ220 was not given special care and attention that it deserved. Number 19. Ferrari Enzo. The Enzo Ferrari is one of the most rare hypercars desired by many sports car lovers. Named after its legendary Italian founder, only around 400 of these vehicles would be built. When it debuted in 2002, the car sold for about $600,000. However, in recent years, its value has skyrocketed. 14 years later, and the final Enzo would be auctioned off for a whopping $6 million. It then beats the imagination of those who saw pictures of a dusty Enzo that had been abandoned in a Dubai police impound lot in 2012. It was learned that the police had impounded the car after it was abandoned by its British owner in a parking lot in 2011. Now, normally, law enforcement in Dubai would sell such a vehicle in detention after a period of time, specifically around 6 months. However, this particular car is yet to be offered for sale. Many British, Americans, Indians, and Russians who reportedly asked to buy the rare Enzo Ferrari would be disappointed at the refusal to sell it. The reason that Interpol believes that the Enzo is either stolen or purchased with stolen funds. In addition, there's also a legal dispute over the ownership of the car in Dubai's court system. Number 18. The Lamborghini Miura. A famous Greek billionaire by the name of Aristotle Onassis had purchased this Lamborghini Miura S for a friend and singer whom he considered to be the Greek Elvis. It would be the first supercar with a mid-engine two-seat layout. Contrary to the expectation that such a gift should be highly valued, the singer actually left the exotic car to rot in a Hilton hotel garage in Athens for around 30 years. It's said that the singer, Stamatis Kokatas, was a race car driver who was fond of pushing his vehicles to their limits. He did the same with this Lamborghini Miura S, and its engine failed in 1972 after over 52,000 miles. To this end, he lost interest in the car and refused to pay Lamborghini for a repaired engine. Interestingly, in 2003, the Miura S's wheels began turning again when the hotel was undergoing renovations in preparation for the 2004 Summer Olympics in Athens. And so the Lambo would be moved to a storage facility where it was then put out of its misery. The supercar ended up next to a red Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Gullwing that was also in a state of disrepair, and eventually the car would be auctioned off for $483,210. Number 17. Bugatti Veyron. The Bugatti Veyron was called a super sports car for good reason. It's one of the fastest cars in the world, and it's little wonder that the price range is around $1.5 million. This hypercar was reportedly abandoned in the depths of Mother Russia by an exotic and luxury car dealer. Obviously, the cost is nothing to the owner, which was why he had left this 986 horsepower machine to simply gather dust. And when you take a closer look at the blurred-out decal on the side of this crashed car, it was rumored that the Veyron was involved in an accident in 2013 when an Aston Martin rear-ended it. But were the repairs for the highly priced car so expensive that the best option was to abandon it? We may never know. Number 16. Koenigsegg Trevita. The Koenigsegg Trevita is one of the fastest and most rare and expensive cars ever made. So what could be the reason one would be found laying fallow in an underground garage in Zurich for over a month? Despite that Zurich is one of the most rich cities in the world, and a lot of Porsches, Ferraris, Maseratis, and other expensive supercars litter the sidewalks, the Koenigsegg stands out as a rarity. This car could be seen parked in the space for at least a month, and upon first glance, it seemed to be in perfectly fine condition. But on second thought, there might be a problem with it, as it was not parked between the lines. A visitor who had come to the garage had seen the Trevita for the first time. The cost of parking in the garage was likely a minimum of €1,000, but when you consider the cost of this car, which runs into more than $1 million, that's absolutely nothing. Upon closer examination of the vehicle, there are several fingerprints on it. Obviously, passers-by who had seen the car just couldn't keep their hands off of it. Number 15. Rolls-Royce Phantom Centurion. The Centurion is a custom-built Rolls-Royce Phantom manufactured for a customer that resides in Las Vegas, and how it ended up on the side of a suburban railroad in Russia remains a mystery that needs to be solved. The car is fully modded out with an exclusive Centurion body kit, and its value sits at around $450,000. Though many people believe the car is ugly, it still doesn't change the fact that it cost a whole lot of money to acquire. When the custom-tuned Rolls-Royce Phantom first appeared on eBay Motors some years ago, the seller wrote that it will become one of the most historically significant Rolls-Royce Phantoms of recent time. Alex Nunez responded, "We tend to agree, as bad things do make history." And here's the history behind it. Being abandoned next to the railroad tracks in the Russian suburbs, accumulating snow, it was said that the original owner of the Rolls-Royce Phantom later sold and exported it to a Russian buyer only a few years ago to end up at this least expected location. Such an expensive car is suitable for a well-arranged garage. Number 14. Maybach 57. The Maybach 57 cost $380,000 and would be abandoned in a parking lot in Cannes, France for around 4 years, gathering plenty of dust. Many supercar enthusiasts have lashed out at the owner in regards to the reason behind the abandonment, and tourists have begun writing finger graffiti with all of the dust that the cars collected. The words "rich bitch" could be seen written boldly on the back. As if that's not enough, someone went as far as removing the front emblem of the sedan for themselves. Maybach has excelled as a luxury automobile since 1921, and ever since then, it's continued to sustain the momentum by offering comfort, design, and technology with each new model. However, this particular model has been discontinued, making it a unique find. It may be something tragic that happened to the owner that the vehicle needed to be left behind, or perhaps they had to flee the country. For now, nobody really knows. Number 13. Ferrari F40. It appears as though the Ferrari F40 is the car of choice for many leaders in the Middle East. It would be reported that the Sultan of Brunei had 11 of these vehicles, amongst a collection of 2,500 cars. Sometime in 1990, just before the beginning of the First Gulf War, Iraqi dictator Saddam Hussein's son Uday would purchase a Ferrari F40 for around $700,000 in cash from a Swiss dealer. This was just one car in his huge collection of exotic sports cars, which included Lamborghinis, Porsches, and Ferraris. Uday would later be killed by American Special Forces in July of 2003, and ever since then, this Ferrari F40 has become driverless. However, the location of this elusive vehicle would only be discovered following a week-long search. They had intended to find the abandoned car and then return it to the United Kingdom for repair. It was eventually discovered outside of a garage in Iraq gathering dust, and a further inspection of the vehicle in 2016 would reveal that it was not only covered in dust and sand, but a number of missing key electrical components were required to get it started. Unfortunately, the mission to return the car to the UK failed, as the car now has a new owner requesting $1.7 million for it, and the odometer reads less than 2,300 miles. Number 12. Aston Martin DB5. The Aston Martin, worth $500,000, has been left in the middle of the woods for 40 years to rot. This sports car has not been driven since the 1970s and is currently undrivable. This Aston Martin DB4 would be launched in 1958 and was the first production car capable of doing 0 to 100 in less than 30 seconds. The intention of its makers was that the car would be able to compete with sports cars from Ferrari and Maserati. but many have asked if this particular vehicle was able to live up to its hype, as it's been abandoned for half a century. This Aston Martin DB4 would be manufactured in the UK in 1960, after which it was shipped across to the USA and registered a year later. In the early 1970s, it was parked outdoors at the owner's home in Massachusetts, where it remained until it was recently discovered. Over the years, the car's condition deteriorated after being surrounded by trees and buried halfway by leaves, and despite the sorry state of the car, it's been described as an amazing discovery with a fascinating history. Number 11. Shelby Daytona. This extraordinary vehicle was the brainchild of an American car legend who sought to win championships, and only 6 of these vehicles were ever manufactured. The first Shelby Cobra Daytona Coupe was built in a shop in Venice, California, and the remaining 5 were then made in Italy. In 1965, Shelby succeeded in securing first place by winning 9 out of the 12 events in their class, thus becoming the first American car to beat Ferrari on its own turf and mythologizing the Cobra Daytona Coupe once and for all. After the race, Carroll Shelby decided to sell it to a toy car company founder by the name of Jim Russell for $4,500. And from there, it would end up with music producer Phil Spector, who drove it around Los Angeles freeways and streets. Unfortunately, Spector received so many tickets that his lawyer suggested he sell the car. Initially, he resisted, but upon realizing that the cost of improving it was too much, he considered his lawyer's option. Thus, he sold it to his bodyguard, George Brand, for $1,000. The car would later end up in the hands of many different owners, and at one point, it ended up in a storage unit where it sat for 30 years. Many people thought that it had been lost to time, but today, 50 years after being built, this Cobra Daytona finally sits in a museum founded by its current owner. Number 10. Bugatti Type 57S. This particular Bugatti was a popular Grand Prix racer with a custom-built 4-seater sports Grand Routier body and a hard-hitting 3.3-liter engine that contributed to its super speed. In fact, it was the fastest road car during its time. Originally owned by Robert Ropner in London, it would later be owned by Rodney Clark, the founder of the British Connaught Grand Prix racing team after World War II. Another spectacular feature of this car is its lightweight chassis. Only 3 versions of this Bugatti type have that feature. Eventually, the Bugatti Type 57S ended up with Bill Turnbull, an engineer and Bugatti enthusiast, and since he realized the masterpiece racer that he had, he began the painstaking work of fully restoring the car. By the time that he had died, all of the mechanical work and a good portion of the cosmetic restoration had been completed, and despite that, there were still a few things that needed to be put into shape. Many people had wanted to own this car, but it would later be placed under the hammer at Bonham's Retromobile Car Show and Sale in Paris, selling for a staggering £3,043,293 British pounds. Number 9. 1964 GT40. The 1964 GT40 was a racing car that debuted at Le Mans in 1964. It was built to beat Ferrari at Le Mans, but unfortunately it had a bad outing, finishing no higher than 29th in the overall standings. Since the car had failed to secure victory in the race, Carroll Shelby would then be brought in to ensure that the program that had birthed the car remained on track. The car would later be delivered its first victory in 1965. And apart from looking great, this vehicle was meant to be a high-performance racing car. It was also quite rare, as only 105 of them would be produced. Out of these new numbers, 1 was untouched and buried for years in a garage. Such a car should not have been found in the garbage. At worst, the owner could have sold it rather than allowing it to rot in a barn. Number 8. 1965 Jaguar E-Type. This rust-covered 1965 Jaguar E-Type was off the road for 49 years and left to waste away in a barn in a small town on the Norfolk and Suffolk border. The car, once described as the most beautiful car in the world, has yet to lose its allure even after 5 decades of dust. It's said that the vehicle was first registered in March of 1965, and then a year later it would be purchased by a professional jockey and racehorse trainer by the name of David Trenchard. After that, this E-Type was owned by 2 more people before being sold to current owners in 1971. They had bought the classic car as a celebratory gift for getting a new teaching job. Recently, that car sold for £41,000 at auction at the Imperial War Museum in Duxford. In fact, car dealers H&H Classics had claimed that the vehicle could have been worth as much as $150,000 when fully restored. Number 7. Ferrari Dyno 246 GTS. In early 1978, there was news of a discovered Ferrari Dyno 246 GTS. It was not found in a museum on display, neither was it found in any auction house. Rather, it was found buried in a suburban Los Angeles backyard. The discovery had solved a years-long puzzle. A Los Angeles plumber by the name of Rosendo Cruz had purchased a dark metallic green Ferrari Dyno in October of 1974 as a gift to his wife. However, just 2 months later, during a night out on the town, Cruz had reported the car as stolen while he was having dinner. The Los Angeles Police Department recorded the vehicle as missing and opened a case, and although Farmers Insurance had paid the claim to Cruz, the supercar remained missing. 4 years later, some children would be playing in a yard when they discovered something odd beneath the surface. While reporting to a sheriff, they claimed that the object looked similar to the roof of a car, and it turned out to be a buried Ferrari Dyno, the exact same one that had been missing. All the while, the tenants at the house had no idea that they had treasure buried in their backyard, and to everyone's surprise, the car was actually in remarkable condition. Number 6. A rare collection of Corvettes. A rare collection of 36 Corvettes had been found collecting dust in a garage after 25 years. Of the collection, the most valuable would be a 1953 Corvette, one of only 300 that had ever been manufactured. The classic American muscle cars were originally won in a competition that had been organized by music channel VH1. They would then be sold to German-born graphic artist Peter Max, who had wanted to incorporate them into his work. In the collection, you'll find every model of Corvette released between 1953 and 1989. However, when the restorations would be complete, real estate broker Adam Heller, who lives and works in New York City, is billed to sell the entire collection to just one lucky bidder. Number 5. Porsche 993. This Porsche 993, with so much accumulated dust, would be found abandoned in Japan, a country famously known for good car dealerships. Was it that the owner could not get a dealership to sell the car? The most popular rumor surrounding this car is that the owner had gone to prison and could not leave behind someone to take care of the car, but nobody's sure. If the rumor was in any way true, one could only hope that the owner was almost done serving his prison term so that they can come back and save the car and get it back on the road again. As of now, there is still time and there's still a chance. Number 4. The 1961 Chevrolet Impala SS Bubble Top. This smashed and rusty vehicle is the 1961 Chevrolet Impala SS Bubble Top. The rare sports car is believed to have been abandoned by joyriders in a rush-hour traffic in Sutton. The police are trying hard to track down the owner of the white Chevrolet Impala Super Sport, or it risks being thrown on the scrap heap in case it's never claimed. While some abandoned cars are lucky to be auctioned, this particular Chevy will likely face the embarrassing option of ending up as scrap. Number 3. Lamborghini Countach. The Countach we have here had spent some tragic years in a luxury chateau wasting away on a French island. The luxury motor is one of only 150 that were ever made and has been dubbed the first modern supercar. It would be purchased in 1983 by a reclusive French millionaire, making it the first Lamborghini Countach that had been shipped to France. It had been rumored that the owner bought it secondhand in 1983 and used it for 30 years. However, as soon as the speedometer read 54,406 miles, he then stored the supercar in a garage on his property where it would spend the rest of its life. Number 2. A 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB. This Ferrari has been abandoned in a garage since 1991, when the owner last parked it there. It would later spend the next 25 years of its life sitting there. Only 205 of these cars would ever be made, and it comes manufactured using lightweight aluminum alloy. Despite the dirt that's gathered from 25 years of being dormant, The car really only needed minor tweaks to be fully restored. But what's so spectacular about the 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB for it to have been auctioned for that much? Well, according to Gooding & Company, the company who had auctioned it, and their president and CEO David Gooding, the car was basically all original. An original interior and a lot of original paint, and it also affords long-term ownership. Number 1. Shelby Cobra 427. In 1991, this 1967 Shelby Cobra 427 was left to rot after the only mechanic the owner trusted to work on it had died. Alongside a 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB, the Shelby Cobra was found by Tom Cotter in an abandoned North Carolina home in 2018. Despite the bad state of the car, it remained special. This particular Cobra was a rare Carroll Shelby build, and instead of the 427 engine of the era, it got a 428 Police Interceptor motor with 390 horsepower. In addition, it had only 19,000 miles on the dash. Cotter would later return to roll the Cobra out of the garage in order to take it to auction. Which of these abandoned cars did you find to be the most fascinating? And have you ever found a fascinating abandoned car in a barn yourself? Let me know about it in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more like it in the future, and I'll see you next time.